Today we're going to be talking about some aluminum specific products for cutting and grinding. So I just want to know, what's your experience with aluminum cutting and grinding?
So I've done quite a bit as regards to like aluminum handrail, guardrail, a lot of ornamental stuff, structural steel or structural aluminum 6061 series. A lot of times we find that once you put the weld on there, regardless of how it looks, it has to be ground off just for aesthetics, and then we have to get it powder coated. So I guess you guys have some different products here, because dealing with aluminum, you have a multiple stage process where you're going through. You have to grind the weld off, then you have to polish the material, then you have to clean it off due to the way that everybody's grinding on it. You guys have a new product, I guess, that you don't have to use lubrication anymore. So if you guys have ever grinded on aluminum, most people use a wax or a WD-40, and you put that wax stick up against the grinding wheel, you put it on the material so that the grinding wheel doesn't load up. But I guess Weiler has a new product to where the grinding wheel doesn't load up. I guess it's pre-lubricated.
Right.
So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I have here both Tiger aluminum cutoff wheels and Tiger aluminum RFDs. As I drop one. But basically what we're looking at is a Tiger aluminum RFD has a top coat that increases that lubrication to minimize loading. Somewhere along the lines you're never going to get away from loading, but we're trying to minimize it and minimize cleanup. So when you use the waxes and you use the WD-40s, you're going to have to clean up a lot. And you've been through it, I've been through it. I used to be a fabricator. So when you have these types of products that can minimize those types of issues, it ends up making you more money because you get things out quicker. It ends up being a little bit more safe for your team. I mean, I've been to facilities where we're using wax sticks, like the one I have on the ground there, and you walk in and the whole place is a skating rink.
Right. Because
the wax is everywhere. I was actually telling Jason before that I didn't actually want to use the wax stick in the booth because I didn't want to clean it off the windows later. So it flies everywhere, it's just not safe. And then other people will use a WD-40 product to lubricate the wheel. WD-40 is extremely flammable. Aluminum dust is extremely flammable. They actually use aluminum dust in fireworks, so you can just understand how volatile that aluminum dust can really be.
Right.
So specifically, we have our Tiger aluminum cutoff wheel that we're going to be trying out over here. But the big thing that's kind of most telling in my eyes is we're going to use one of our standard Wolverine aluminum oxide discs, RFDs, same size as the Tiger aluminum, but it does not have the top coat.
Okay.
So what I'll ask is, I'll have you go in the booth, work with that on that flat bar. I just want to see how you feel when it starts to load, so you understand what it feels like. And then we'll switch it so you have that muscle memory of how that dry abrasive felt.
Okay.
And then we'll put this on and see how you like the difference.
All right, let's give it a shot.
So Jason's going to load up this dry abrasive right now. It is going to be an aluminum oxide RFD, Wolverine variety from Weiler. We're using the same product that we make just to show you the difference between an aluminum specific product compared to something that can be used on aluminum but is not ideal. So we're able to cut down steps by not having to use any lubricant. So the big thing I want him to feel is the difference between the dry abrasive and it has it start to load. Once it starts to load under maybe a minute and a half, it'll start to feel slippery. So that's the aluminum attaching itself to the grains on the abrasive, not allowing the grains to touch the surface anymore. So right about now is when the dry abrasive is going to start to load. It's going to start to decrease cut, and I guarantee he's starting to feel that in his hands where he has to press a little bit harder for it to actually do its job. So you can see just from him showing it, that's the aluminum loading onto the RFD on the dry abrasive. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to switch out with a Tiger aluminum that has a top coat to eliminate that loading issue. So now Jason's putting on our Tiger aluminum disc. And he's going to do the same exact grinding, same exact feel, same exact pressure, so we can understand the difference between a dry and a top coated abrasive, specifically one for aluminum. So this aluminum is acting as the lubricant that I had used to put on these wax sticks. We used to rub them on the abrasive. We'd have to do that every 4 to 5 minutes for it to actually keep cutting. But with this Tiger aluminum, we're eliminating that process altogether. and the process of cleaning up the aluminum afterwards. Like I said before, we're not eliminating all of the loading, but we're minimizing loading to keep those grains available to take away more materials. I can already see from here the actual amount of aluminum coming off and hitting the plexiglass on the other side. It's a big difference compared to that dry abrasive. But the big thing is it's going to keep its cut rate constant throughout its entire life. So right about now is when that dry abrasive would really start to load and stop cutting, really glazing over the material because of all the aluminum that's attaching itself to the RFD and blocking those grains from getting into the material. So it may look like it's loaded right now, but that's the aluminum dust that's attached itself to the lubricant. So it's not loading, it's just attaching itself to that lubricated RFD. So we're gonna get Jason out here and we'll talk about what he felt.
So initially with the first wheel that I used, you could actually kind of feel when it started to load up because it wasn't cutting, it wasn't digging into the material anymore. With the other one, it felt constantly, as if it was cutting the entire time. So that's a big deal. I mean, because aluminum wheels work great for the first couple of seconds. Once they load up, you got to put additional wax on there. When you start putting wax on your material, especially because a lot of aluminum architectural ornamental, that stuff gets powder coated. So if you have that wax film on top of there, it's not going to accept the powder coating. So one thing we used to have to do is wipe everything down with acetone or put an acid on there to get rid of all that wax on there so that it could be powder coated. So I mean, that's a big advantage. I mean, it's a safety hazard when you have to deal with acids or different chemicals to remove that wax, so you can put a decent finish on there. So I mean, using that wheel, that's going to kind of alleviate additional work in the process, as well as a safety factor. Right. So I mean, that's a great idea.
Right. So yeah, that's exactly right. Huge part is safety. You don't have to use the wax. Just reiterate that safety is always number one. So when you can eliminate a process that's making a slippery floor, putting your hands closer to contact with the abrasives. I've seen people apply the wax sticks when it's in full RPM.
I've done it myself.
That's dangerous, and you don't think about it when you're doing it, but it just takes a second to slip to hurt yourself.
Right.
One thing we'll go to next is the Tiger aluminum cutoff wheel. So the Tiger aluminum cutoff wheel is infused with that same type of lubricant, that top coat, but it's inside the wheel now. So when this is actually cutting, it's going to be giving more of that lubricant into the material, minimizing loading when you're using the cutoff wheel itself. Okay. So you should feel that same type of same cut rate going through aluminum, but once you get halfway through, that's when a normal abrasive will start to really load, and you're just going to lose your cut rate completely. This is just going to keep on going.
Okay. You want to talk about switching out the guard too?
Right. So one thing that we want to touch on with these two is before we were using a Type 27 product, so we had a Type 27 guard. He's going to be switching out to a Type 1 guard, so that is a 180-degree coverage of the wheel. Very, very important when you're using cutoff wheels. A lot of tools don't come with the Type 1 guard, but it's something you should always buy as he's switching it out right there. Big thing too is make sure that you adjust that guard so it's protecting you in the most optimal way. So we're going to have him cut through this big plate here. Big thing to understand is when he's cutting through, he wants to be able to have that product not load. And we're using a large piece like that so we can see the difference as it goes through. This product is going to allow the grains to do the action by adding a little bit of lubricant to move that softer aluminum material out of the way and not have it actually stick to the consumable itself. So a big thing with cutoff wheels is at a certain point, the cutting surface is going to load and start to slip across the material. With the Tiger aluminum cutoff wheel, we have a formulation that eliminates the loading, so it's going to cut non-stop from the start cut to the end of its life. So we got a second cut in there. And one thing to note too, notice how he's working across the surface, he's not staying in one specific area. That's extremely important when you're using cutoff wheels, is to have motion through your cut. So you're alleviating some of the heat and you're actually moving it to allow for a little bit more abrasive touch as you're moving through the cut itself. So what did you think about the aluminum cutoff wheel?
So I like that I had to take a couple more cuts in there just to make sure that it was going to be repeatable. I mean, this 1/2 inch thick aluminum, usually about halfway through the first cut on something like that, that's when it's going to start to glaze over. Initially, when you start grinding with it too, a lot of times it has a tendency to chatter a little bit. This was really smooth the whole time you're going through it in each one of the cuts. So I noticed it was very smooth, it cut very fast, and very clean.
And just one thing I want to point out, as you picked up and showed the disc to everybody, you did see that there was some alumina on there.
Yeah.
We're not eliminating loading completely, we're minimizing it, but the good thing about the Tiger aluminum cutoff wheel is that once you hit that back to aluminum again, it's going to shed those aluminum parts that are blocking the grains.
Okay.
Right. Cool. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was actually pretty impressed with both products that you have, especially coming from an area where I used to do structural aluminum. I think that could be a big cost saver and a big time saver. And everybody knows time is money. So if you can eliminate a lot of the time and effort, you're going to increase productivity and increase revenue.
Right. Right. And I just want to thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions about any abrasive products, come by, pick both of our brains. We've been more than happy to have a conversation and help you out.
Yeah. Thanks for having us out, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
Thank you.